Hello everyone, and welcome to the Talking Station's Midweek Update. This is Season 1, Episode... Crap. I forget what episode this is. Does anybody remember?
5, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll find out. You know what? If you're listening to this later, the title will have been updated and everything will be fine, so just ignore me. In any case, on today's show, we've got our panel. Of course, I am Artimus Albosa from the network. I'm joined by RonUSMC.
From Test. It's very exciting over here.
Test is definitely active right now, and we're also joined by Suspiria.
Hey everyone, I'm FedUp, now part of Legacy Co, and we're busy too.
We'll get into some of those details a little bit later. But today's show, no special guest, no special segment. We've got a bunch of news to go through because a lot of stuff has been happening because of how active various groups are in the game right now. And so we're just going to jump right into it. First of all, a bit of Wormhole news. So there was a Reddit thread going around. First of all, 2 hours worth of comms during the HK eviction of Rage got leaked to Reddit. And further leaks occurred such that a post, or reportedly a ping, sent by the leader of HK was posted to Reddit saying they're looking to evict Outlaws from a wormhole. Now, there's a bunch of confusion about this because a lot of people don't understand, how various groups live in wormholes. Do they own one wormhole? Do they own multiple wormholes? Is this just a farm hole? Is it their home hole? So we're going to try and set the facts out that we know to be true. So first of all, we know that HK is currently living in a C2 with a nullsec and a C5 static. That's right, Hard Knocks has been downgraded to a Scrub Lord low-class wormhole alliance. Furthermore, we know that Outlaws is a Russian group. They also live in a C2 null C5, or at least they had previously, but about 6 months ago, Hard Knocks and a bunch of the other usual suspects from C5, C6 base went and evicted them from their home wormhole. And so they may be back in a new C2, C5, they may be back in other wormholes, but of course, many wormhole alliances, including Hard Knocks, including Outlaws, have what are called farm holes. And these are wormholes essentially where they do their care bearing. They have a structure, they have some capitals or some other PvE ships, they keep everybody logged off for a week, let sites build up inside the wormhole, log on once a week, run all the sites, make a bunch of X, and then go AFK. So that is what we think HK is looking to evict. It's just another one of Outlaws' farm holes, and this is going to be a bit of revenge because during the Rage eviction, Outlaws was one of the Russian groups who was working with the Initiative in order to evict the Hard Knocks farm holes, particularly in C5 and C6 base. So a bit of interesting drama going on in wormhole space there. HK has definitely got some spy issues to deal with in the future.
That is interesting because, I remember, when that whole thing was going down, a lot of the kind of hype was all of the wormholes people kind of getting together to try to fend off the nullsecers. But that's interesting that the Russian group sided to get rid of HK. Do we know how big they are or in relation to HK or any of that kind of?
So if I recall correctly, they are smaller than HK. I'm going to double check .lan and zkill to make sure that that is correct. They also, up until recently, had a very different play style. So residents of C5 and C6 base, a lot of their activity is through C5 and C6 base. They hunt more in wormholes, they do some occasional hunting in nullsec when their chain goes to it. But C5 and C6 base, you don't have statics directly to K-space, right, to the rest of New Eden. Whereas the wormhole that Outlaws lived in had a nullsec static. And so what they would do is they'd roll that nullsec static and then take hunting parties out into Sovereignty nullsec. So these were the guys sort of like Volta, where they'd just suddenly show up in your constellation with a whole bunch of Lokis or Slipnirs and gank your oracles or supers. So it was a different place. Taking a look at Outlaws, looks like they only have 886 tunes in their alliance, and wormhole alliances are well known for being a lot of alts, so you can assume anywhere from a third to a fifth of that is actual real human being.
Gotcha.
So interesting stuff to keep an eye on. If the leaked ping is accurate, we should start seeing kill mails, or at least structures getting reinforced in some Outlaws Wormhole starting tomorrow. So keep your eye on the kill boards for that. In other kill board related news, we have Try, who lost a Sotio to Skill Yourself, and it's particularly interesting because the Loot Fairy was not happy that day, and so the Ragnarok, which had finished build and was just sitting in the Sotio when it got killed, didn't drop. So that's kind of unlucky for the few Skill Yourself pilots who decided to Rio this, but there's a point that I wanted to make about this particular kill mail, and that is you'll notice only 5 people are on it, one of which is a Saber that did 0 damage. So Skill Yourself is back to their habit of just like very few people bashing structures and clearing out the area, which is something that you really don't see when you're talking about assets as valuable and as large and as possibly heavily defended as Sotios are. And it boggles my mind. First of all, when Skill Yourself did this back when they kicked the DRF out of the East, everybody was like, yeah, they're too far away from everybody. Nobody really cares about that space. It'd be a pain in the butt to get out there, so we're just not going to bother. We're not going to hunt them. Now they're doing it literally an Insmother, right? So Legacy is right next door. Fraternity is right next door. There's probably some sort of agreement going on, or just does nobody care about hunting supers, which are just YOLO bashing very valuable structure?
You know, I think, and it's multiple timers. Like, this isn't just a surprise attack. Oh, we got you while you were sleeping. There's timers involved. There's planning. And then, you know, I mean, I only have to think that the owner or something is AFK or something. They didn't deliver the job. Like, because you can't dock, you can only build there, and as soon as you build it and you undock, that's it. So, you know, that is just sad to see on a kill mail like that. That poor thing.
I mean, you're probably right. It's probably whoever built the thing is AFK, and the owner of the Sotio is like, there's no jobs running in there anyway. We'll probably just let it go, and didn't know that job was in there, right?
Well, Try is 100% gone from Insmother. All of their Sov is gone. Half of it went to Scourge, half of it went to Skill Yourself. They have been trying to make inroads in Pureblind, not been very successful. They've just been constantly getting thrashed, ganged up on by other groups there. And so I can understand why they didn't show up to defend the timer. That makes sense. The Ragnarok, I mean, I guess just Ragnaroks aren't that valuable to some massive groups, but Try did lose quite a few not too long ago, so you'd think they'd want it. But it could be difficult getting it out. In any case, that's an interesting thing that happened. The Loot Fairy said no. Congrats to Skill Yourself on continuing to be able to YOLO bash very expensive structures in a couple of supers and not get punished.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Seth.
Speaking of Skill Yourself, they're active in Imencia now, past 2 days. So, FedUp update, we've been moving down from Pureblind essentially all the way down to Imencia, which is a long, arduous trip for us. We did lose some supers, and we lost some carriers in the way, and a Titan. You know, I just think our group was very excited and zealous to get down to our new home, and we were being hunted by some of the best super hunters in the game, right? Yeah, Snuff. Ardra got one, you know, and, you know, we don't have a lot of experience in moving supers, so we got caught a few times. It's been a different learning experience. But we're down, and you got the map up now. We finished flipping over our Sov, but because the Sov is so new, Skill Yourself has been hitting it a bit. Yeah, those 3 timers on the map just happened about 10 minutes ago. They do have a staging Fortizar and YTAC F there, and they did contest our staging Fortizar anchoring and REB. We won the anchoring last night. They won the anchoring earlier today in YTAC F. So definitely things heating up over in Imencia, and we're getting right into it.
What are those fights like? You said you won the most recent one, and you lost the one. What are those fights like? How many versus how many? Like, what kind of doctrines?
Last night was probably a little over 100 in system. It was late. It was late in the U.S. time zone, So it was FedUp and Ishtar's. Skill U came over in Munins, and Ishtar's are not a great matchup for Munins. It's horrible, actually. But Brave and our friends from Colo came by in a bunch of Eagles, and the Eagles were able to at least push them off for the time to repair. We lost Iskor in that fight. We had some weird things going on last night. I don't know if you guys experienced this, but Eve disconnects from Mumble on both sides. Like, I don't know if like the internet broke last night, but you could browse YouTube just fine, but couldn't talk on Mumble. So we had a couple of guys die to a disconnect and weird things going on. Even Skill Yourself said they had some guys do that too. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on.
I was definitely experiencing the Mumble issues, but I didn't have any trouble with Eve itself.
Yeah, our main FC disconnected like 3 times right as the fight was kicking off. So that kind of hurt.
So, Silver, I have to ask the question of these last 2 fights you were on, how many supers were on the kill board?
None yet.
That's what I'm talking about. Nice.
None yet. Yeah, earlier today in the EU time zone, Skill Yourself was much bigger. They came in a large Macarial Munin ball. And Legacy kind of just wanted to go over and poke them a bit. We wanted to not feed too badly on that fight. So, it's just a staging Astra really, and it makes no difference. It was just a bait Citadel, so we didn't want to really overcommit there, I think.
Are they using shield or armor Macarials?
You know what? I wasn't actually in the fight today, so I don't know if there was shield or armor. I imagine there was shield because they were flying together with Munins, but I don't know that for a fact.
Gotcha.
Yeah, mocks are really fun because shield, armor, arty, autocannon. They're very versatile, and
like the Swiss Army knife of battleships. It's really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, we should also just recognize the fact that, you guys are making a big step as an alliance. And we've talked about this a lot, about those kind of medium-sized alliances and what can you do? Do you just get beat up or do you move on? So congratulations on that, man. Good luck.
No, thank you. Yeah, and we're struggling to get set up. We just got our fort down, so we're not 100% battle ready. But in the next few days, we'll be able, FedUp at least, we'll be able to kick up another notch in this fight. And we're a fighting alliance, and we're glad to be back on the front lines of more content with friends. So we're excited.
Right on. Well, speaking of more content and the front lines of fighting, Test is fighting quite hard out in the Northeast. They've been fighting with Test and Geminate. We talked a little bit more about this in the last show where we discussed sort of the background, why Test is up there, what we're expecting to happen as we see it, how this relates to the fighting going on in Perimeter. And things have been really heating up now. We saw the Imperium pushed up a few more SIGs, it seems like. They also had like a proper Imperium-wide fleet that was brought up to aid Test in a fight over the Kalevala expanse. And this turned out into quite a brawl, which Test and the Imperium ended up winning. But more importantly, depending on your perspective, they also managed to kill, I think, 12 iHubs in the Kalevala expanse.
Yeah, it's a lot of kind of fights happening, and they're so, you guys would appreciate this, that they're so old school. And what I mean by that is it's like 7 fleets, and they're all different doctrines, and everyone's kind of just running around like maniacs. It doesn't seem like, the kind of fleet fights that we see nowadays, the capital fights are, there's going to be 600 Eagles, and there's going to be 200, of this, and 200 Logi. That's what we kind of see. But with these crazy fights up in Geminate, it was Ishtars and Jackdaws and Eagles and Munins, and it was just it was just funny, but it was fun and interesting, and like I kind of mentioned to Headliner, for those kind of top tier FCs, that's really fun for them, to really kind of explore and see all these different kind of, and how all these kind of things work together. But that was a pure subcap fight. It was great. And then, right next door in Kalevala, they just went burning down iHubs, and that's reported, renter space or something like that. So it's just, getting all those ADMs down to zero, taking iHubs, et cetera, and just kind of burning it, basically.
So I did want to make one note on the significance of the Sob destruction in Kalevala expanse. And so what we did is, first of all, we reached out to Horde and we asked, hey, have you guys actually been using the Kalevala expanse? You've been actively deployed for combat for a few months in a row now, things like that. They said, no, we haven't really been using it. It hasn't been a significant source of income for us for a few months now. And so what I did to double check that is I went back to the monthly economic reports. And I went through the economics reports to see what the mining and the ratting income for the Kalevala expanse, the region, looked like. And it looks like that back in October, you were looking at more than 500 billion ISK was being generated in the Kalevala expanse. And that continued to diminish up until this month, or rather last month in December, when only 128 billion of mining amount, these are mining amount numbers, were extracted from the Kalevala expanse. So it definitely seems like Kalevala wasn't as heavily used as a source of income, right? It's not a massive blow to Horde in terms of hitting their wallet where it hurts, but it is still an available source of income that isn't there anymore. And furthermore, it could be a morale hit, right? This is a region which you previously controlled, and you're not controlling it anymore. So it's a success for Test Alliance. It's not necessarily as big of a success as people had reported it to be, just because Kalevala wasn't used as much as it used to be. But nevertheless, you can't take away from the success that was had there. And as a bit of a counterpoint to that success, there is also a much bigger brawl happening in the AUTZ that totaled to nearly 800 billion ISK in losses. Ron, I'm betting you were asleep for this fight.
I was asleep. I heard inklings of what the kind of thing was happening, but I have to go to sleep because I have a job. But yeah, it was 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was very early.
So this particular fight we had, it looks like there was a bait Fortizar set up by Legacy. They had the Imperium and Snuff on standby with Dreads, and basically it appears, from the outside looking in, the plan was to anchor this Fortizar, bait out some unsupported supercaps, and then dunk them with a Dread Bomb. But it appears that NC and PL and Pandemic Horde were prepped for this, so they had all of the faxes that you need in order to support a Supercapital Brawl, and moreover, they had enough supers to just constantly mow through the massive, I think you said 280 dreads were lost on the side of Legacy and Imperium?
Yep, that's right.
Wow.
So we can see here all of the dread losses along with all of those fax losses. Now, one interesting thing that I was talking to Stedio, he's a Horde FC, we had him on the show previously, and I was asking him about this fight because he was a subcap FC. And one of the things that he mentioned is that during this fight, it never got to 10% tie-dye, at least that I saw in footage, or that was reported to me. There was a little bit of tie-dye through it, and then in some points there was just zero tie-dye, because there were fewer people, it was the AUTZ, right, so less stuff was going around in the nodes surrounding, in the system surrounding mapped to the same node. So the server was performing very well. But what that meant was, when you have these alliances and their characters, many of them have a subcap pilot, and a super pilot, and their mandatory fax pilot, and some people have a super and a titan, 2 supers, 2 titans, etc. And that is a lot of multi-boxing. Now in 10% tie-dye, you have the time to go account to account to account and get everything set up. But when there's no tie-dye, you can't do this. And so what Stedio told me is that basically when the supers got dropped, they essentially abandoned their subcap fleets. They just stopped doing anything useful with them, because their pilots were too busy piloting their their super capitals, their faxes, any dreads that they had, carriers that they had, etc. Which I think is a very interesting quirk of how fights shake out when you have such heavy multi-boxing and tie-dye doesn't kick in.
Yeah, I think that is such a different gameplay style to that quick, because what you just mentioned, right, which is you have your subcap because you want to get in the fight. You might have your carrier on the side because, hey, what if we drop carriers? And then, if you're test, you have your dread ult. Everyone has their dread ult, but I mean, if they're firing like they fire normally, like pow, pow, like you're going to be changing targets. I mean, it has to be absolute madness. Absolute madness. So that's really funny that Stedio said that. They just abandoned their subcaps and just started plowing through them. So that's awesome.
There's also one other thing that I was talking with him about, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier when you were discussing the Kalevala expanse brawl, and that is the current diversity in doctrines that we're seeing in nullsec. So, particularly in hacks, right? We've got Ishtars are viable, Munins are viable, Eagles are viable. These are heavily used doctrines, and it's a bit of a rock, paper, scissors if you do something very not recommended, right? So clear everything else away for the sake of argument. Munins are good against Ishtars. Ishtars are good against Eagles. Eagles are good against Munins. So it seems like rock, paper, scissors, but then you have the situations where depending on the grid, depending on what you're fighting over, depending on how the FCs maneuver their fleets, that can change which of these doctrines is the best choice for you. And in this particular case, Stedio actually let me in on the back scenes and said, listen, we were intending to drop supers, so we brought the Munins because we wanted to be able to shred Dictors. That way, if things went down, if things went south, we could shred tackle and jump our super fleet out. Whereas, because they were expecting Eagles from the Imperium and from Test, they knew Eagles were good against Munins, but the subcap fight wasn't that important, so they didn't go with Ishtars to counter the Eagles, they went with Munins to counter the Dictors so they could support their Supercapitals. I love that sort of stuff, and I'm super happy that we have a current subcapital meta in EVE that multiple, even hack doctrines are viable at the same time.
And I knew that we were going to talk about this. So when I was on the fleet, Radomir, one of our FCs, love you, buddy, was kind of giving us the play-by-play, and I screenshotted it. So this is the layout of the fleets. So this is Radomir. Goons have a Jackdaw fleet and a Worm fleet. In it have Stukas, and then Predators. Predators is a SIG for test, have normal bombers. And then Legacy, that's not test, but Legacy had a Jackdaw fleet. Black Legion had Munins. And then the Hostiles had, Pandemic Horde had an Ishtar fleet. PL had another Jackdaw fleet. And NC had Serbs.
Yeah.
Crazy time.
That's a soupy mess.
Well, each one of those, I love that CCP has finally made it such that each one of those doctrines has found their niche. Jackdaws are the go-to, like, we kill your tackle, we're great support for just about any other larger doctrine fleet. And then, of course, we just mentioned how the hacks play into this. Stukas are relatively new, but they seem to be incredibly powerful. Bombers are, of course, an old classic. It's just a great time for fleet fights and fleet doctrines as far as diversity is concerned in EVE. I'm super happy. In any case, our last thing to talk about on today's episode, Test also has some issues with leaks. Of course, not surprising. It's a long-running thing when your forums used to literally be the EVE Reddit. And so an update for the Geminate deployment posted by Villy was released. Ron, you want to give us a TLDR of that paste?
Sure. So, to me, the big news is, Master of Dinosaurs is back. He's been AFK for a few months. So Villy's back. And, the impression that I got from it was, like, hey guys, don't get too wound up north, because we've got a lot of other things that we have to do. We have other missions, we have the March thing coming up. Like, don't, I guess burn the candle at both ends. That's how that saying goes, up north. So, hey, north, still content, still fun, still running fleet, still going to do it. But if you have to rat, if you have to mine, it's all good. So that's kind of what I got from it.
What is, you mentioned the March thing. What is the March thing?
Yeah, so March 22nd is when our ceasefire with fraternity ends. If you remember, they had a 6-month ceasefire, and that in that 6 months, we're hoping, they've spent a lot of time, and we've actually heard from Faulty, down there, that they're getting good, that they're getting some numbers. I always had the utmost respect for fraternity when we were fighting them, because they did what the FC said. They showed up, they undocked, and you know what? My hat. I mean, that's it. They never talk trash in local, but we can help them with that, and we can help them work on that. But I had a lot of respect for them, so it's really great to see them growing and doing better. I think they're, they can be a force to be reckoned with. So March 22nd is the day when that ends.
So what you're saying is, as much as you guys have a bit of a grudge against, or at least some members of Test and the Imperium have a bit of a grudge, Test and Legacy have a bit of a grudge against Horde because of the perimeter thing, because of fights you've been having, you'd prefer your content close to home. That's what you're telling me.
I think, yeah. I think, yeah. Because it's very far. I mean, they're up in the very far corner of the map. Like, it's a long ways. Although it is very close to Jita, which is very nice.
Indeed. All right, well, some things to keep an eye out in the future. Of course, we've got the Wormhole invasion, or eviction, pardon me, supposed to kick off tomorrow. We've got FedUp currently fighting with Skill Yourself. We have Test currently in Geminate, and come March, possibly deploying back down south to fight with Fraternity. Interesting times coming there. Also, a bit of an update on my alliance. We're currently in Providence doing some fun things, so keep an eye out on that kill board. Shout out to Faulty and crew for being bros. Like, the stuff they've been doing in Providence is incredibly inspiring for the sort of things that you can get away with fighting in that area. So shout out to those guys, the help that they've been giving us behind the
I like to be inspired. Tell me more. I like inspiration.
Well, for inspiration, you can go back and watch the Talking Stations midweek update that we had with Faulty as a guest, where we discussed in detail all of the things that they did down in Provi and all the fun that they've been having. And you can have your inspiration there. As far as what it has inspired us to do, let's just have to wait and see.
Okay. That's all right. I'll wait and see. I gotcha.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Short, sweet, to the point, but I think we got through all the info that you need to be informed on. Of course, if anybody has any more info that you think we missed, or stuff that you'd like to discuss about today's show, join the Talking Stations Discord. A lot of active discussion, particularly about a certain CSM member and their forum posts, but there's some good discussion about other things as well, various channels. It's generally a good place to hang out, even if you're a fan of lurking around in chat channels. I'd recommend it. But that'll do us for us today. Thank you very much, Ron and Silver, for being on the show. No shoutouts today, because I think that'd be pretty standard shoutouts to my group, my bros, my corp. So, see you guys on Sunday.